Grand Canyon, Arches, Monument Valley. They had Indian speakers in the evening. One of them was a hoop dancer who must have danced with 15, 20 hoops. He was my size, but 6'2", so we proportionately, he wasn't a skinny guy. Maybe not quite this much, but a little bit. And we had, because of when we went, a lot of kids were in school, and our grandkid is tracked out year-round school. So we wound up with 7 kids and 7 guides. So each kid had his own guide virtually. They did a really great job, much better than we thought. I kidded beforehand that they were going to have a buffet on the bus because they always have buffets on the boats and buffets on the wherever. So they had a buffet on the bus, but it was just snacks, but it was still there. We had a great time. My son-in-law had never been out west at all, so he was amazed at some of this. My grandson, of course, had never been out west either, and he was 8 years old, and he enjoyed it to a large extent. He loved climbing on the rocks and everything, so we had a great time.
Good, yeah.
Excellent. Any others? Yes, Jim?
Boris picked on me earlier about beer. I have a milestone. Number 2400 is Barn Dog Chocolate Vanilla Porter, which was enjoyed watching the women slaughter the ties the other day.
Yeah.
Tell me again the name of that beer.
Barn Dog.
Barn Dog.
It was the chocolate part that
That's what I couldn't. Chocolate beer.
Vanilla. Chocolate Vanilla Porter.
Where was this at?
Pardon?
Where did you buy this beer?
I bought it at the Majestic Wine Company in Southern Pines. They have a wall of options, and one of these days I will have sampled them all.
It's real.
More than 2,400.
Any others?
Actually, I thought you were going to say Yarborough's.
All right, Patrick.
I'm gonna have to give you $1. It's an honor to be your school board chairman. It's more of an honor to be your friend and a fellow Rotarian. But it's really an honor to announce these numbers that at Southern Lee High School we had $2.7 million in scholarships. At Lee County High School at $2.5 million in scholarships. And the numbers are still coming in because there's kids still getting scholarships today. So we'll have over $5 million worth of scholarships at our local high schools once the early college turns their numbers in. So that's $5 million that is staying here in this economy in Lee County that can be put back to work. So that I want to brag about not all of our students. So just want to give you that history.
Thank you, Patrick. It is outstanding, Patrick. You're right. Any others? Scholarships.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'll throw out a quick brag. I don't know if anybody was there last night, but the Arts and Vine things, the executives and the chairman of the board last night, it was really rocking. It was really a cool small venue thing, a lot of energy there despite the little bit of rain that came down, but it was fantastic. And Terry videotaped the whole thing, so let's give him a big round of applause. I'm sure that sooner or later we'll probably see it, right? He was working tirelessly.
Any others? Okay, Morris.
Thank you. Thank you. And I don't know how many of y'all have ever been over, as Matt said, to the Sedona area, but that's one of the most beautiful places on earth. The rock formations out there, the color.
So much to do with
You
it.
get a chance to go out there, it's a great place to see that. And Oak Creek Canyon, all of that good stuff. Anything else come before the, Harry has something come before the group.
I'm making a request that the president, not the president, your president for Rotary Club, that you do the opening jokes again. The reason why I made a freshman mistake. I had the camera on, but I didn't push the start button.
Are we gonna hear his jokes again? Is that what you're
No. I think we've heard enough of it. We might do it later.
Tell him to get in touch with Morris.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you all. At this time then, we'll move into our program, and I'm gonna ask Bill if he'll introduce him, but how I got started on this, two of the directors on the board of directors that I serve under, tobacco farmers, and one of them lost his contract completely with tobacco, and the other one, I think, ended up losing about half his contract. And I was telling Mitchell, growing up, I mean, tobacco farming, it was the thing, and I mean, it was just a tremendous benefit for the farmers, and all of us know that's gone away, and so many of them are looking for something to be able to replace that and use the land that they have, and so I was being serious when you're going to start seeing more and more of these plants around, and we're not going to pot, but we're going something looks like it very much or whatever. So, Bill, if you will.
Thanks, President Morris. Yeah, I'm very excited to welcome Mitchell Williams here today. Mitchell, matter of fact, has only been on the job here with Extension, what, a week and a half now? Yeah. He started last Monday, so he's very fresh, and we just wanted to throw him right into the fire. So
do we need to get him an application for membership or
well,
something?
I was going to mention too, the Lions Club is actively recruiting. I just found out, I heard some talk this morning at the office, and I think their thinking is he'll bring the median age down quite a bit. So we're going to have to put the hard sell on him here for Rotary. But we're excited to have Mitchell. Mitchell's a local guy. He went on to get his bachelor's and master's at NC State in the crop science department. Has done some private industry work, worked out in the eastern part of the state with Meharan Agriculture, then went off on his own, did some private consulting as well, and decided he wanted to come back and work with Cooperative Extension. So we are really happy to have him, and Mitchell, of course, is going to talk about a very popular topic these days, an emerging crop that you're going to start seeing. So I will turn it over to him and let him talk about hemp production here in North Carolina.
Like Bill said, I'm Mitchell Williams. Happy to be here. I actually came to these meetings as an interact at Lee County High School when I was in high school. It's pretty cool to come back and see you. And I went to Jonesboro Methodist Church too, so coming full circle. But I'm going to talk about CBD hemp production in North Carolina. Go to the next slide. But what is hemp? Well, it's pretty close to marijuana. It's marijuana and hemp are varieties of cannabis that were developed due to selective breeding. Industrial hemp for its fiber and seed oil. Marijuana for its mind-altering psychoactive compounds, or THC. Cannabis that can be smoked to get you high is 10% THC or greater. That number has risen in a number of years. A lot of that we get on the street is 25 to 28%.
What's the sweetness?
Speaking with law enforcement. But by law, industrial hemp is 0.3% or less, so it's a lot lower than marijuana. But some of the problems that law enforcement runs into is it smells the same as marijuana, it looks the same as marijuana, and you can't tell the difference until you do a chemical test on it. So that's going to be something to...
I mean, are people smoking hemp?
There's actually smokables.
Okay.
But I believe there's a ban on that within the last week.
It's being discussed.
Yeah. So this whole hemp market is still up in the air, and it's going to take several years to get everything worked out. Next slide. It's actually a member of the Cannabaceae family. This includes hops. There's a few beer drinkers in here, so pretty interesting. Next slide. But don't know, some of y'all remember, there might be a few in here that probably remember this. During World War II, hemp was imported from Asia. and it was used for uniforms, canvas, and rope, a lot of naval rope. But after the attack on Pearl Harbor, obviously our supply was cut off. So the U.S. Department of Ag launched a campaign to grow hemp in the United States. There was a lot grown, Hemp for Victory. And that is actually former President George Bush. Yeah. So, pretty interesting stuff. And George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison all wrote about growing commercial hemp. So hemp's been around in the United States for quite a long time. It's just kind of come full circle, was outlawed because it was a controlled substance, and now it's coming back. So next slide. But in industrial hemp, there's three main end markets. Seed grain for food production, fiber, and flour extracts. Let me go ahead. Fiber, there's a lot of different things. A lot of people think of hemp. It's still some clothes being made out of it. Hempcrete, never seen that before, but I've heard some talk about it. Don't know much about it. Actually, some car manufacturers are using hemp to produce door panels and things like that.
That brings up an interesting point. I heard at one time Henry Ford was doing something with hemp in car bodies, and they came up and it was stronger than steel, corrosion resistant. You ever heard that?
I had heard that.
There you go.
Yep.
So
because it could be produced. Well, that before the term green came along, he could produce that, grow it, and yeah, that's an interesting fact. Not many people know.
Henry Ford.
But seed and seed oil, there's all kinds of different things. Hemp beer is becoming pretty popular. There's actually multiple breweries in North Carolina that have gotten a license to work with hemp. Next slide. And CBD oil.
Ready, Joe? I think I have to check that one out.
2401.
But hemp, CBD oil, very popular. You can get it in capsule form. You can rub it on your skin. You can put it under your tongue. There's many different things. FDA is working through what all's out there, and they're coming up with different regulations for it. But it's a very popular product, and there is predicted that by 2020 it's going to be a $1.8 billion market in the United States. So it's moving right along. Next slide. The cannabinoids, what are they? Well, cannabidiol, excuse me, I always get my tongue tied there. That's what we're looking for, industrial hemp, just for flower extracts. We're looking for the CBD oil. Well, THC is also a cannabinoid, but there's a whole bunch of them. There's these and at least 113 others. And there's been talk of looking at using different cannabinoids, doing more research on it. But so the hemp plant's a pretty interesting plant. There's just so many different properties that we haven't looked at thus far. But cannabinoids are mainly produced in the trichome glands in the flowers of the female cannabis plant. And they likely evolved as a defense mechanism to protect it from the environment. And I don't know if you can make it out, but there's a little fly stuck to that plant. So kind of interesting use. Next slide. But can anyone grow hemp? Well, actually, no. You have to have a license to grow hemp in North Carolina and other states. And you have to be licensed to the North Carolina Industrial Hemp Research Pilot Program. And this is just the first page of it. But it requires a Schedule F from your tax returns. And they're wanting to do this to prove that you have an agriculture income, so that you're a farmer. They don't want just Joe Blow going out here and planting hemp because it's under the NCDA, so they want to keep it for farmers. Next slide. Most of our farmer experience, you cannot have drug-related felonies. You must sign attestation to allow the Department of Ag and law enforcement to inspect and sample your crops at any time. And they will come out and inspect randomly. I know I've met one or two folks that have been inspected. It's kind of scary, but whenever you apply, you have to give a GPS coordinate for where every field is and where you store it. And law enforcement can show up and will show up at any time and inspect it.
And they're just coming in and testing for that under 10%?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's if it's over 0.3%, they will destroy it. So that's kind of scary. So you really got to stay on top of it. But so moving on into hemp production, there's a question as to if you want to plant it by seed or by transplanting like a tobacco crop with a clone or a plant. Different companies kind of recommend different things depending on who you're contracting with. Seed is roughly selling for $1 a pound right now, or $1 per seed, excuse me, in the field. So that's $1 per seed. And clones are selling anywhere from $4, and I've actually heard up to $12 a plant. So pretty expensive.
Who are the sellers?
A lot of the companies that they're contracting with are actually sellers. Some of the end users have their own lines that they're pushing. Then some of the other tobacco companies, such as Cross Creek Seed, that have traditionally produced tobacco plants and different seeds, they've gotten into it pretty heavy because the North Carolina, the tobacco market has gotten so bad. Everything moving overseas. Tobacco growers and the companies are trying to move on to the next thing. So,
is there any farmers locally here starting with a seed, putting it in a greenhouse, and then selling them as a clone, selling them as a plant? Because I think Ryan Patterson's doing that.
He is.
And Buchanan and Broadway, did he end up doing it?
I'm not sure if he did it or not.
Okay.
There's a lot of different things, and some of it's kind of a moving target, and some folks don't want to tell me everything that they've done. Because everybody's trying to make the most they can, and they don't want to let anybody in on their secrets, and I can understand that.
No, it's annual versus perennial.
Correct.
So Mitchell, isn't the quality control for the seed below 0.3% or 0.03? 0.3?
0.3.
So below 0.3 is the seed that you get. Doesn't it make sense that the THC cannot increase once you put it in the ground?
Well,
or you can't manipulate it to increase it or something?
Well, the problem is later in the season.
He's taking notes on this.
Yeah,
I am taking notes on this, yes.
The problem is later in the season, you can keep track of your THC content and your CBD content in your plant. And we still don't know, NC State's still doing a lot of research in North Carolina, but there can be spikes of THC content later in the season, and we don't fully understand what's causing it.
Well, and I know we could joke about this, but if I'm putting out lots and lots and lots of monies to make a cash crop to feed my family with this, I'd be pretty mad if that went over and then the law came and destroyed my crops.
Oh, and it's happened.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'd be really mad.
And,
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, you have to.
Your money just went up a
smoke.
Hey.
And they send off samples. You should really do it every few days as you get later in the season to really know what your levels are at. And folks ask me, should I sample just one sample from a whole farm? I would try to keep that subsample pretty small. So if you have one area spike up, you can go ahead and get that out of the field real quick.
That's a different sale.
Right. That's exactly right.
I was kidding.
That's so much alike.
That's right. Correct.
John, you roll it up and set it up.
I was thinking about that.
Exposed to the stress.
No, you can't get insurance. But here's Cross Creek Seed. I'm not in any way pushing them, but they're pretty popular selling tobacco seed, but they've jumped into this pretty hard. At the bottom it says pricing $4 per clone per transplant. So you can go to the next one. This is another company, $3.95 per clone. You can go to the next one. So it's pretty expensive. But There's actually, you can go on the NC State Extension website under industrial hemp, and they have a whole list of different sources that are approved for sale in North Carolina. So there is a lot of them. Go ahead.
How many plants or seeds does it take per acre, just out of curiosity?
The number is kind of all over the board, but roughly 1,500 plants per acre. So 1,500 times, say $4 on the low end, that gets pretty expensive. $12. I don't know how somebody makes it. $12 a plant. That's crazy.
But what's the markup? I mean, if they're selling for $4 a plant, what are they making? What are they producing for? $1 a plant? Or?
Probably.
So
Maybe even less than that. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think, and I'm no marketing expert, but as this market grows, those numbers will come down. I mean, they got to, because there's a lot of growers that bought 2 or 3 clones and have cloned them themselves and just bypass this market. And that's going to continue to happen if they stay at $4 a plant. That's just, that's somewhat highway robbery.
There's no restrictions right now for somebody cloning themselves?
No.
Don't have a license or anything to do that?
Well, you have to be licensed to do that, but the folks that are doing that are already, they have a contract to grow for themselves. So they're just cloning their own plants, and they can do that under their contract.
Mitchell, is this the salvation for the tobacco farmers?
I hope so. I'm hopeful that it is. It's really too early to tell if this is what's going to save them. The money is outstanding compared to tobacco, especially in the last few years. And I really hope that this is what's gonna be, but it's just a little too early to tell. It's still in the early stages. This could be a fad thing. 2-3 years from now, folks might not want CBD oil. They might say, hey, that's a little too expensive, or different reasons, and it might just crash and burn. So we're not. It's just kind of up in the air right now.
How hardy are these plants? Are they impervious to water and drought and all that stuff?
They're like a regular crop. And when they first started talking about growing hemp in North Carolina, there was some talk about how hemp could just be grown here and no diseases, no insect pressure. It's just easy to grow. Well, in the few years that we've grown here, we figured out that there's quite a few insects that hurt it and quite a few diseases. And there's currently no pesticides that are labeled for use in hemp. So you got to constantly scout your crop. It'll come, but it's just going to take some time for that.
But you're saying the potential market is there, so that the old small tobacco farm, I'm from the Midwest, where if you didn't have 640 acres, you didn't farm.
One section, yeah.
But the profit is there, the family could live on that, huh?
It's
potentially.
And I've heard so many different numbers on what you could gross and net per acre, just like anything. Tobacco, those numbers are more set in stone because it's been grown for so many years, and there's so many growers doing it on so many different types of terrain and different outfits. But the numbers are all over the board on what you could make. I know several growers that have grown hemp for 2 years and haven't gotten paid yet. So that's pretty scary. I know some folks that have made a wad, in 2 years growing hemp. Yeah. So
that's an exact figure.
Yeah, I've heard folks could make 15,000 an acre. I've heard folks could make 8,000 an acre. It's all over the board, and it depends on your contract price and what the end use is for it.
I'm not familiar with the rope making industry or burlap. Is that starting to make a comeback as far as U.S. manufacturers?
The focus right now is more on the CBD. The first year that we grew hemp, there was a lot of focus on fiber production, but the money is in CBD oil, so there's been more focus in that. I think that is going to come. I think it's easier to manage that way. Not quite as much money to be made, but it's just easier all around. And I think there's going to be a spike in that in the next few years. Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, you're getting a lot of questions. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I figured it's a hot topic.
So I got what should be an obvious question. Is there more monies in the high THC, which is the drugs, versus the CBD oil? Because the CBD oil sounds like a headache to do a lot of work, but it's legal.
Right. I would say I don't really know, but I would say that it's probably a lot more money for marijuana.
I would think so too.
Yeah. Yeah, because
you're not legal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I tell you, the scary thing is there's a lot of folks that have grown marijuana, you know, in the state, and now all of a sudden we got hemp, and they're saying, hey, well, we grow marijuana, we can help you grow hemp. Well, I don't know, that's not too smart on their part. I don't know if I'd be going around telling people that, but there has been some folks.
I was asking for a friend.
Yeah.
They always
Must be involved.
But this is actually Randy Patterson's website, or Ryan Patterson's website. Ryan's really got it going on. Yeah,
By
that's
Rudy
actually
Mullis.
Zach, the previous extension manager. So,
I was just making a comment. It says in the spring by Rudy Mullis and Ryan Patterson. We used to have a Rudy Mullis that was in this Rotary Club years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
really?
He's furniture. Yeah, Dawsonbach.
Good.
Probably a son.
So, you know, like I was saying about the tobacco market, the reason the hemp market has taken off in North Carolina is because of the, you know, lapse of the tobacco market. Folks just can't make any money. Folks are losing contracts altogether. If not, they're getting cut 40%, and they got to find a way to replace that. So hemp's really kind of just walked right in and walked into a good thing.
Mitchell, food crops are not an alternative to tobacco farmers that can't raise tobacco anymore?
No, sir.
Because of?
Just no money. The commodity prices are low. Well, corn was $6 a bushel, you know, and that's pretty good, but every other year it's $3.75, you know, it's just, and Lee County, bring this back to Lee County's not known for the best soil in the world. So it's...
Our soil was designed for tobacco and tobacco only.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, but that's just it, because that's a 90-day crop, and you do it all with your...
That's right.
So hemp is not that way. You're not just fertilizing the heck out of it in the beginning.
It's a lot more hands-on than... Well, tobacco's pretty hands-on, too.
For that period, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But that's a tobacco center that's been retrofitted to plant hemp.
Correct, yeah,
So,
and there's a big push for that
and
because of the
it saves
infrastructure.
money, and it saves.
Right.
I'm a former tobacco farmer. I don't know if many of y'all know that I grew up on a tobacco farm, and my family quit farming because we couldn't make money, and there was a lot of times we had food on the table. So, and we now lease land possibly for him. But this is the way to save money. This is taking a retrofit piece of equipment that was designed for tobacco, making it for him to save that person that much money. Talking about $20 a plant, you notice on the left-hand side there's plants laying on the blue side there. There's plenty of that. You'll find plenty of $20 plant that get up in the ground that you lost. Yeah. Or if you're setting and you miss a hole, my father would push me off the center a long time ago. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that don't go into it. We have farmland that we've rented out to certain people, and once I told them I was going to raise the rent on their property, and they said, why? I said, because you're bringing more law down this road. You're bringing more security for me to have to worry about if somebody comes to the woods thinking this is marijuana and that kind of thing. You're close to my home, so I raised the rent. So I mean, there's a lot of it's definitely Lee County. It's coming. That's for sure.
It's definitely coming. Every grower I've spoken to in Lee County, just in the short period I've been here, if they're not growing it, they're thinking about growing it. I mean, it's all of them.
Well, and Ryan Patterson created his own company.
Right.
So the first company in Harnett / Lee was Broadway Hemp Company.
That's right.
And you can buy your CBD oil through Broadway Hemp Company, at Broadway Hardware, Pig Wiggly, and different places. It was the first legal company in Lee County to be able to get it. So he grows tomatoes, hemp, tobacco, and CBD.
That's right. Yeah.
So
once they transplant, you know, this is several days after transplanting. They're usually a little smaller than that. About like a tobacco plant, you know, just a few leaves on it, a few short leaves. But just going through real quick, you can go to the next one and the next one. There's multiple diseases. And a lot of these are diseases that we already have around here. And we didn't really know that they would affect hemp until we started growing it. So a lot of this stuff stays in the soil for long periods of time. Going down to harvesting, you must monitor your THC levels, sending them off to the NCDA. Harvest is traditionally done by hand. That's changing. There's a lot of companies, especially Granville Equipment, that's looking at using tobacco strippers to harvest hemp. Just a lot faster, a lot less labor. But when you do it by hand, hanging plants in a dry area, it's time consuming because you're handling every single plant. Poor quality just because you don't have the airflow going through and it's just sitting in a barn, kind of like burley tobacco, same type. And it's very labor intensive. Need a way to speed up the process. So this is a hand harvest, just hanging up in the barn. It's just a burley tobacco type system.
Are they converting tobacco barns into? Okay, I see the picture now.
Yep, that's a rack barn.
So that's a rack. That's not a long barn, but that's rolling up.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd rather use a box barn.
Yeah, because you can put them in the box.
Yeah, it's just so much faster. I hate messing with rack barns. Putting in tobacco, we had 4 rack barns and the rest were box barns. I hated using racks.
So when we say rack, we're talking about something about this big. It would hold a good 4 armfuls of tobacco leaves.
Mm-hmm.
The box barn is something tall as we are.
Right.
That literally you would fill up. So when they cut that plant, it's going over into the box and you're packing it down as much as they can.
Then you just take stakes and stake in the box to hold it.
And slide it in and cure.
Mm-hmm. And it's research is saying that you can, I believe it's 2,800 pounds you can cure in 48 hours versus folks doing it by hand, hanging it in a barn. You know, it'll take 2-3 weeks. So you can get through a lot more hemp in a short period of time. So going back to the NCDA inspections and reporting, they can come and destroy your crop if it's over 0.3%. And this is actually a picture in North Carolina of someone's crop being destroyed. And whether that, these folks aren't doing that on purpose. They just didn't keep up with it, didn't test like they needed to. And NCDA, when they see that it's 0.4%, because you have to go through them to do your testing, they know exactly where your field is and they'll come and burn it. So you got to stay on top of that, or you can not make anything and just lose all that money you spent per acre. But some of the concerns, there's currently no crop insurance. I've heard that the companies are working on that. There probably will be something in the foreseeable future, next few years. Really, we're gonna have to wait until we figure out what the market's gonna do and who the big players are, the companies that are contracting for hemp. There's currently no labeled pesticides or herbicides. There's been some folks doing some off-label applications that work in hemp, but it's against the law. I mean, if you're not following the label to the law, you're out of compliance. And also, these companies are testing for pesticide residues down to the parts per billion. They have a zero tolerance on that. So you need a soil sample just to figure out where you can put hemp in the field. And they test at the end too, just to make sure you're below a certain level. There's not really been enough research done yet to know if any of these residues will affect you or affect the plant, but they're just wanting no residues at all in the plant. So I've got a quick quiz for you. Can somebody tell me which is a marijuana field and which is a hemp field? Somebody take a guess.
Can you tell by the smile?
Anybody? Somebody say.
If you're not sure, put it in a brown manila envelope testing service, care of John Ramsberg.
Hey, come on.
Which one?
It's kind of right.
That is a marijuana field in Colorado, and that is an industrial hemp field in Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean they look so much alike. You can't tell them. And that's the problem that law enforcement's having is you just can't look at it and tell. There's currently no device that they can carry with them to do a quick test on it to tell. So, growers that are transporting this stuff to market, they got to have their license on them because they can be stopped at any time, and it'll be seized unless they can prove that it came from their farm. So, and in fact, we're under special instructions as extension agents that we can transport it, but we have to carry a copy of the license as well. But if you got any more questions, there's a couple places you can look. The NC State Extension website under Industrial Hemp, the Industrial Hemp Pilot Program in North Carolina, and also the North Carolina Industrial Hemp Association. But anyways, any more questions?
Thank you. Mitchell, thank you very much for quite informative presentation. I didn't have any idea there was so much interest in it. I'm a little uncertain about that, but anyway, thank you very much. Hope it does turn out to be a good cash crop for the farmers. That would be great. At this time, Mitchell, I need you to come forward and draw a name for the Polio Plus. Draw a number.
If you would have given
3190. 3190.
Wow. Yeah, Smiley over there. 8 weeks in a row. Well, you know what? Hey.
You step in here and all one of these.
Congratulations.
Dig down in there and grab it. Coalition to Restore Sanity to the White House. I thought I threw all your tickets out.
No, it was me. I finally won.
Burglar wins this week. Next, we have no meeting next week. The last meeting of the month. 20. Let's see. We got 5, 6. I'll figure it out. 7 drawings next in 2 weeks. A lot of money. The five grand prize and 2 weekly drawings. So we'll have 7 drawings next in 2 weeks.
Okay, at this time I'm going to ask Jeremy, since he's the winner, if he would lead.
Yeah, we won.
I'm sorry.
It was Neil.
Again.
Neil.
You made it back.
Who won the...
Neil.
Oh, Neil, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Neil.
He won the polio first.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.